Ladies and gentlemen, it's the latest episode of Zach on Film. Joining me, like always, Steven Schleicher.
What do you got there, Zach? Is that a milkshake?
Yeah, you want a really long straw?
Can I drink your milkshake?
I mean, if you want to.
All right, I will drink your milkshake.
This week on Zach on Film, we are talking the number one rated movie according to New York Times since the year 2000, the Paul Thomas Anderson 2007 film, There Will Be Blood.
Have you seen a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson stuff?
No.
You
because
haven't?
we've always talked about Boogie Nights, and I have yet to see it.
Not seen
No,
it?
I still haven't watched
here's the
it.
thing. I could have swore, when I saw Paul Thomas Anderson's name pop up, I could have swore Boogie Nights was on the list, and I'm almost positive we've watched Boogie Nights.
I am
with Marky Mark and his giant wang.
No, we always just reference it. We reference it all the time, and I've yet to see it. I'm gonna watch it now. I honestly think this is the only Paul Thomas Anderson movie I've
not seen Heart 8, which is it's his first film. It's okay. I'm not a super fan of it, although a lot of people really like it because I believe that has John C. Reilly is in it. I'm pretty sure it has William H. Macy in it as well.
Yeah.
A lot of his films have William H. Macy in it. Then Boogie Nights, of course, which is a favorite of mine. Probably of all the Paul Thomas Anderson films, this is my favorite. Then Magnolia, which is okay. It's got Tom Cruise in it, but it wasn't Boogie Nights, and I think it really confused a lot of people.
Okay.
Then you have Punch Drunk Love, which is the Adam Sandler one where everyone's like, oh, this is going to be a comedy. And then they find out that, wait a minute, this is not a comedy at all.
It's pretty good. I have never watched it. It's pretty good. I've heard a lot of people.
And then there's There Will Be Blood, which is what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Then The Master, which if you haven't seen The Master, it's really, really good. It's a mind messer up.
The Scientology one, right?
That's the Scientology one. And then Inherent Vice, which I again, another one that I enjoy.
I haven't watched it.
It's kind of crazy. And I haven't seen this one, Junoon. I haven't seen that one. It's a documentary.
Oh, no.
And then Phantom Thread, about the fashion industry in the 1950s, which will star Daniel Day-Lewis. That is what he's currently working on. So I have seen all but this documentary. So I really like Paul Thomas Anderson. He has a unique voice, I think, when it comes to telling stories about family and oftentimes looking at topics that some people would want to shy away from. Like the porn industry in Boogie Nights is like fully embraced to where it's just like, this is people's jobs, and this is how it affects those people's jobs. But here's how people come and make families out of one another. And the family theme really runs, or relationships really run through a lot of his films. So if you like There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights I would highly recommend, and probably before you have a kid too, because
sure.
After that you don't want the kid walking in at 4 years old going, "Why is that man's wiener so big?
Will mine get that big, Daddy?" No, son.
And then The Master again is I like all of these films. Punch Drunk Love is just so. I rate it's one of my least favorite ones down there with Heart 8, but Master's really good if you want something a little bit more recent, and of course that has Philip Seymour Hoffman in it,
right?
Which is a great performance by him too.
And
so,
he's in most of
his stuff.
He's not in this one, but he's in Boogie Nights.
He's in Boogie Nights. I'm trying to remember if he was in Inherent Vice. I don't think he appeared. Oh yeah, he appears briefly in Inherent Vice.
Okay.
And then then that's it. So yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to say this is the second time I've watched There Will Be Blood. The first time I watched it was my first summer at Next Tech, so it was like 2009, and I had a TV in my office, and it was before I realized I can't have a TV on and get work done. And so on HBO, because we were a cable company, I had all the channels, There Will Be Blood was on, and so I watched all of it. And by that, I mean I watched it in periodic breaks between like actually doing work.
Right.
So I knew the general scope of the film, and I certainly remember how it ended, in that Paul Dano's character is kind of a loop-de-loo.
Yeah.
But certainly did not take the time and dedicate like a chunk of 2 hours and 45 minutes of
it doesn't
watching
feel like
all
2
the,
hours 45 minutes.
No. But so it was a much better viewing experience when you can actually watch the entire thing instead of like faking you're actually working while watching this movie.
Yeah.
So There Will Be Blood is the Daniel Day-Lewis starring film about a man named Daniel Plainview who starts out with pretty much nothing down in the bottom of a hole
in Kansas.
Yeah, and works his way all the way up to being potentially one of the biggest oil tycoons in all of America. And faces some interesting struggles, mostly self-inflicted along the way.
I would say for the most part, all of his problems are self-inflicted. And why do you think that they are self-inflicted? Because I think they come from two sources. Well, maybe three. One might be a vice, but what do you think are his sources of? What are his problems?
Yeah, so Daniel Plainview is essentially obsessed with becoming incredibly wealthy.
Do you think he's obsessed with becoming incredibly wealthy? Because I never get the sense that he's obsessed with becoming incredibly wealthy as much as he...
I mean, unless you want to say he's obsessed with becoming incredibly powerful.
I think more powerful is probably the more important phrasing on there, because one of his biggest problems is he hates competition.
Yes.
And we see time and time again in the movie is anytime he perceives competition, he gets rid of it. Whether he sends it away, whether he, bashes it in the face, whether he shoots it in the face, whether he accidentally may have some piece of machinery fall down on someone. He does not like competition, and that is a big problem for him.
Right. Yeah, and it is such a problem that at the end of the film, he is fine with sending his son away and also being like, oh, by the way, you were never my son.
Yeah.
You were a prop this entire time, and have fun losing, because
Right.
I will beat you to the ground.
I will beat you. What do you think another one of his issues is?
You mean like besides the drinking?
Well, so
the drinking's pretty
alcoholism,
big.
the alcoholism is probably another one that a lot of people point out, and they point out very early on that alcohol is his best friend, because it's with him always, right? Doesn't matter if he is mining for silver or he's on his first oil well dig in Los Angeles or wherever that he may be. Alcohol is always present, and he's always trying to, I don't want to say force alcohol on other people, although he does do it onto his adopted son constantly throughout the film. But yeah, I think alcoholism is another big problem for him, because by the time the movie ends and he's late in life, he's essentially just gone. And I think that ultimately leads to him killing Eli, the preacher, at the end of the film.
Yeah, even in the first third of the film, when I can't remember what accident has happened at his drill site, but we come in to Daniel's space and he's essentially just passed out in the middle of the floor with his son in the bed. And that's pretty early on, and then it's just mainly subtle references through it.
Well, I mean,
until the very end.
Even when his partner, or one, I guess it's a construction worker, but I always thought of him as his partner, is killed in the bottom of the well, and so he takes on HW as his adopted son. First thing we see is he's dipping the nipple in alcohol and trying to get the kid to quiet down on it. Later on, after HW has had an accident which has left him mostly deaf, if not completely deaf, but I think mostly deaf is how it comes across.
Yeah.
Because the way they sound design it, it's like he can hear muffled sounds, but not a comprehension. But when his brother shows up, he basically pours like half a glass of Jack into milk and then forces HW to drink it down. And then basically throughout the movie, anytime someone's offering him a drink, he's doing it until the very end, which is surprising, because at the very end, when he and Eli are having their confrontation, Eli offers him drinks and he's like, no thanks. And it's like, whoa, that's kind of surprising.
I mean, he did just like drink half a bottle of like vodka.
Right.
So what was the other issue with Daniel you were referencing?
I think he has a real ego that puts him, or maybe it's his id, that is bigger than religion, because he just has a real problem with religion and doesn't like people telling him what to do. And personally, I think a lot of this movie is him butting heads with Eli over Eli wants something. So you have religion on one side and you have consumerism, or you have capitalism on the other side, represented by Daniel Day-Lewis, by Daniel Plainview. And those two just clash throughout the entire film. And it doesn't matter. I mean, Eli wants to give a blessing to the oil well before it starts. And he basically, partly it's Eli's problem for coming and saying, well, here's what you need to do. And Plainview is like, I'm not going to do that. Screw you. And he does just the opposite, as so much to rub Eli's face in it when it comes to launching that. So those are the three that I looked at. And, alcoholism, the ego and religion, and then the competition are the things that I really think are his biggest downfalls.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so you touched on the religion part, and that comes in There Will Be Blood in the form of Paul Dano's character of Eli Sunday, who is a part of the Sunday family, and we're introduced to that through Eli's identical twin.
Yeah, which is really weird.
It's just strange. And I read an anecdote that said originally Paul Dano was cast as Paul Sunday, who we see in the beginning of the film, comes to Daniel to give him information about where there is oil seeping through the ground. And he's trying to get money from Daniel to lay claim on this, and essentially just for the information to go to his family's ranch and take this land. When Daniel goes there with his son and they're looking around, he ends up having dinner with the Sunday family, and sitting at the table is Paul Dano, but he is not Paul Sunday. He is Eli Sunday.
Right.
And it took me a while in this film to realize they're not the same person, and that he wasn't just using a fake name at the beginning of the film.
So that's what I thought too, is maybe he was using a fake name, or I didn't catch the name, so that when they got to the Sunday ranch, they had to pretend like they didn't know each other. Because there's a real reaction from Plainview and HW, who are looking at him like, don't we know each other? And Eli's like, I don't know you. So that was one thing that I thought. But then the other thing that I thought was, perhaps someone has a split personality and doesn't realize it. A Cain and Abel mentality kind of thing going. And that's kind of how Paul and Eli are kind of portrayed in this film a little bit, where basically Paul is gone. He's dead. I mean, he's not dead, but I mean, he's dead from the rest of the film. So you kind of get that weirdness kind of going on with that. But it is a bit confusing.
It's a bit confusing, and I think that's I don't know if it's a problem or it's a quirk about this film, in that many things aren't explained.
Right.
As kind of like the HW situation, if you're not really paying really close attention during the first 15 minutes of the movie, when there's no dialogue whatsoever, you don't pick up on that maybe that actually was Daniel's son the entire time, and we skipped 4 years at the beginning. So it's like, well, there's a child here now. It could be his, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the Paul Eli situation is explained essentially, I think, in like 2 scenes, when Eli gets mad at his dad for calling him essentially an idiot, and his son as an idiot, his other son, Paul.
Right.
That's briefly explained. And then at the very end of the movie, when Daniel and Eli clash to the death at the end, he essentially says, Paul got all the money. You bet wrong on the religion. He made right by betting on the oil.
Right.
So those are like the only 2 scenes that really confirm that they're different people.
Oh, yeah, that they are different people.
And like there's not something really weird happening.
Yeah.
But so Eli's, like you said, he is he's not a devout religious person. He is
Eli pretends to be.
He pretends to be. He's like
religious.
A charlatan.
So yeah, to me, he is the. And again, I'm not trying to put any religion down.
No. It's just this character.
He is your TV preacher dude.
Yeah.
Who's asking for money, and he faith heals by driving out the spirits and all that stuff. He's he's the Third Revelation Church or whatever it is, which may be a real church. I'm not sure.
No.
But it's that part of the religion, and because that area of the country really seems starved for religion. I mean, they are really in the middle of nowhere. This little town of New Boston or whatever it's called.
New Boston.
Or Little Boston.
Sorry. Right.
And so people, if they want church, I mean, they've got Eli, who proclaims to be talking to God and is able to perform miracles to get people's rheumatism gone away. So it's easy to suck people into that. And then when the oil workers come, they also get sucked into that. So there's this really pull from the church. And, Eli is just like, look, if you want to use this land, you need to tithe to the church, and we deserve money because you're on this land, and you need to build us a thing. And really, Eli has no claim to anything.
No.
I mean, Daniel and the father, Mr. Sunday, made the deal, and that's it. And Eli keeps pushing and pushing and causing problems. and starts pointing out to people and, that, oh, well, these accidents are happening on your site is because you didn't let me come in and bless this stuff. And Daniel just kind of wants that gone away with. He doesn't want people really thinking that there's any kind of mysticism behind it. This is just man versus nature, and this is man conquering nature, and this is the way it's got to be, and go away religion and faith.
Yeah, I think Daniel is perfectly fine with Eli doing what I think he perceives from the very beginning to be a giant scam.
Right.
As Eli is the one that actually conducts the deal for the land, for his family's land, instead of his dad, who would have taken much less money for the land.
Right.
And I think Daniel is fine with Eli until he comes asking to do the blessing on the well. Because I believe Daniel sees it as a power move to be like, if this well works, Eli will say, it is because of my blessing that it worked, not because of the hard work and ingenuity that I have put in and the labor and of these men to find this place and build these machines. It'll just be this charlatan saying, I bless this well. We are now all rich because of it. And Daniel cannot stand that.
Right.
Because
it's competition,
it's competition.
Right? It's competition with God.
Yeah.
Which, again, another problem that Daniel has is just competition with everyone, even when a stranger shows up who claims to be his half-brother. And based on the tales that he's heard, he's never known of this person before, but this man, Henry, has paperwork, he has diaries, he has stats and figures about what has happened. And so he takes him in and says, hey, this is my half-brother. And he starts, making him part of the family until he starts reminding him about things that would have happened or would have been familiar in Wisconsin. And finally, he's like, wait a minute, this guy is not my brother. He's lying about something, and essentially beats the truth out of him and then kills him.
Yeah.
And then that's when they're trying to get this piece of property from this guy. I forget who it is. Mr. Bandy. That's his name. And he kind of knows that Daniel killed his brother, this guy claiming to be his brother.
How do you find that out? When that happens, this is very confusing.
He was drunk. I mean, first of all, Daniel was drunk, so a freshly dug grave is probably
not that good.
Not that hard to find, especially when you do it right next to his property or on his property. And so then that is the kind of the noose around the neck that Eli needs to get what he wants from Daniel, and makes him come to church and confess that he sent his son away. And it's not Daniel's fault that he had to send his son away. His son can't hear. He needs to go to a special school. First, he wants to send him to an asylum, and that doesn't really work out. But then he gets him a teacher to teach him sign language and all this stuff. And Eli just uses it against him and humiliates Daniel in front of everyone, which really, if the seed hadn't been planted for rage and revenge, Daniel has a 30-year plan on how I'm going to get this guy back and humiliate him and just, destroy religion in one dramatic scene at the end of the movie.
Sure. In the scene when Daniel is being it's come to Jesus, but it is I am coming to Jesus so I can be a millionaire type situation where he doesn't really believe it. He's going along with the song and dance.
There's no point in this movie where you believe that Daniel has any kind of faith.
And that scene is big because it is Eli getting revenge on Daniel, because earlier in the film, Eli comes to Daniel and be like, hey, dude, you said you were going to give my church $5,000 a long time ago, and you don't have it. And Daniel just bitch slaps him. And just throws him in the mud.
Yeah.
And is just like not having it.
Yeah.
And so then Eli gets this situation now where he gets to, and the people in the crowd don't see it as embarrassment, but Eli knows this is embarrassing, or degrading at least, for Daniel. And
because he has him on his knees, essentially begging for this money by saying that he's a believer and a sinner, and he sent his son away and has done all these horrible things. And you're right, Daniel puts up with it because he wants to be rich.
Right. But in that scene, it seems to me, watching it, that Daniel does have an emotional reaction to the idea that he abandoned this child.
Which is probably why in the very next scenes after that, the sign language guy comes on board.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
he may have a little bit of, oh, I have, this kid was my only family.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also, the statement at the end where Daniel tells HW, hey, I've just used you as a party trick, essentially, to get people to buy into my thing that I'm a family man.
Yeah.
Maybe there's even a realization that, look, I'm struggling right now, and it's because I don't have HW here. He's either, I don't want to say a good luck charm, but he is essential to my schemes.
Yeah, that's possible. I would
agree with you that initially it does appear that there is regret of what he has done.
Yes, yeah, because then HW does come back, and then I know we keep jumping around a little bit, but in that final scene with HW, when he tells them that he never actually was his son, it does, I believe it is that sequence that does a flashback to younger Daniel and HW when he's running around as a child with the girl.
Fun, yeah.
And it seems like that is a reminiscing point for Daniel of a nice time.
Right.
Because it is, I don't think Daniel ever would have told HW he wasn't his son if he wouldn't have been, if HW hadn't said, I'm leaving you, I'm going to go start my own oil company.
Yeah.
I think it definitely seems like he's trying to get in his head, like that competitive spirit is like, if you're going to do this, I'm going to degrade you, and then you're going to have to try to pick yourself together and try to do this because I want every advantage I can have.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. Let me ask you, when he is finding religion and Eli's slapping him around, at the end of the service, he turns and whispers something in Eli's ear that nobody hears, not even the audience, and then Eli kind of just walks away.
Yeah, it's a great thing because after Daniel's been baptized with the water, he essentially is only talking about the pipeline, and even when it's hard to hear, but when Eli is just ranting and raving like he does, you can hear Daniel almost mocking him of like, oh, here it goes. It's like it's coming. And he's just mocking him subtly in the background all the time. It has to be something like, you're going to get the money, but I'm like going to kill you or something. Something sinister that Daniel says to Eli that no one hears. Because Eli's shook after it. He's not operating at the same level that he was.
And it's really weird. I mean, right? I mean, it's kind of I know it's, when you're watching it, maybe it jumps out to people, but it seemed very subtle, and then it brings up that question, what did he say? Because Eli doesn't run away, although soon after he does go...
He does leave.
He does leave, yeah. And becomes a radio preacher.
Yeah.
Which is fine, because that's all down the road, but it's like, maybe it's like, you better get out of town or I'm going to kill you. I don't know,
Yeah.
Because it would seem like if there was a threat like that it should be included in the story, right? Or maybe it's just something left to the viewer's interpretation, especially when we get to the last line in the movie where Eli has come to visit Daniel and ask for money because the stock market has crumbled and he's losing all his money, and Eli is needing money from Daniel. And Daniel is basically like, well, you need to denounce religion and say that you're a scam and all this stuff. And it's a really dramatic piece.
Really good scene.
And then Eli says something to really make Daniel angry, and he grabs a bowling pin and beats Eli to death. Just smashes his head open. And the butler comes down, and to check on him, Daniel just basically says, I'm finished.
Yeah, last lines of the film, and they kick in with like Brahm or something.
Yeah. It's Beethoven.
Is it Beethoven?
I think it is, yeah. So what do you think? What is your interpretation of I'm finished?
Yeah, the I'm finished thing is interesting because is it him saying he's done, that he's overcome his final competitor?
So that's one really deep way to look at it if you're looking at it from the capitalism standpoint of I'm finished, meaning I have defeated all of my enemies. I have defeated drink, and maybe he has when he's like no alcohol for me in that last scene. Who knows? Probably not. He's gotten rid of his son, which he sees as competition. He's gotten rid of Henry, his fake brother, and now he's gotten rid of Eli. All these people that he allowed to get close to him, and now he's had to get rid of them. So I'm finished. I'm done with my. I'm done. I'm the king of it all.
And then, yet there is almost an exact opposite of that I thought of kind of initially, where it makes me seem like I'm done with all of this. Like, I don't want a part of this anymore.
Could be. And that's, again, another valid, I think, interpretation that people have had.
Yeah, it is. That line is very much open to interpretation.
I guess my interpretation is, I've screwed up, and there's no way. I mean, I'm almost positive that if you beat somebody to death in his home with as rich as he is during this time period, that there's no way it's going to come back on him.
Oh gosh, no, that was never.
There's almost a little feeling of, okay, I've done it, I'm finished, my career is over, kind of thing. And
I mean, possible too. I mean, like, what if the butler was like a narc and just like ratted him out?
No, I don't think it would be like that. But it's just like, there's this idea of, that I've ruined my career, and I finally realized that I've ruined everything. I'm finished. Kind of comes up there, whether it's ruined family or ruined relationships or whatever. But there was, I guess, in thinking about it, at the time period, he probably would have gotten away scot-free.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, people now get like if you're rich, you're not getting really convicted of anything.
Yeah. So that I'm finished is really interesting.
I think, to me, it makes more sense narratively and through the character that it is, I'm finished with this competition that I've won, because I believe that musical piece that kicks in right after he says that is the same piece of music that plays at the dedication of the oil well after he snubs Eli.
Okay.
I remember this because I think it's in a video I linked to you from the YouTube channel Nerdwriter.
Okay.
He does a explanation of There Will Be Blood through shot counting and structure. I think it's that video. I hope it is. I'll have to watch it again.
Well, it looks like you said you shared 2 videos, it looks like.
Yeah.
And I'll put those up in the show notes.
Yeah, so the Nerdwriter one, I believe, is what it is in reference to. I watched like 5 videos over There Will Be Blood this week after I watched it. And that score is repeated from the oil well scene and from the ending. So if that's the mirror they're trying to put, then I would think it's Daniel overcoming this competitor that essentially had a larger than life person or idea on its back instead of just like the nature of oil. But it is a very good ending. There will be blood.
It's a satisfying ending, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we go almost 3 decades of Daniel's life.
Yeah, it's like 1895 to 1927.
Something like that. So,
or 1886.
It seems like really there's no more left of Daniel's story. I think he just becomes old and decrepit and dies alone, and that's not anything I really want to watch from this film. I think we get a low point in the beginning, and we kind of get a low point at the end, unless a low point in most people's moral compass of beating someone to death and then saying you're finished, instead of his idea. He probably is like, I'm on top, I've overcome everything, and now I'll bowl by myself, I guess, until I die.
I think he could do that.
I think he could too. I think he'd be fine.
Yeah.
One film, There Will Be Blood, was constantly compared to, when I was reading people's critiques and an analysis of it online, was Citizen Kane.
A little bit, yeah.
A very power, money hungry, mildly crazy main character going from nothing to the top of his industry, and then essentially dying alone.
I think the big difference, though, is that Kane wanted everything, right?
Yeah.
He had to control everything. Daniel doesn't want to control everything. He just wants to beat everything. And literally and figuratively.
And Roger Ebert said There Will Be Blood is not as good as Citizen Kane, and I don't think he even considered them close, because in his mind, Kane had, I don't know if it's the innocence or the longing for something else with Rosebud, like that calling back to a more peaceful time of his life.
Right.
That is not something Daniel in Anderson's film has at all. I mentioned that flashback with HW, but we still have 20 more minutes of the movie after that scene takes place. But the Eli scene's pretty long.
Yeah.
And it is certainly the I'm finished is not as like a character's look back on a fond moment of his life like Rosebud is in Kane. And so it's an interesting comparison between two characters. I can definitely see where people would make the comparison.
Well, and it is hard when you watch it. It's hard not to try to make that comparison, because when I was watching it this I don't know, fourth time or whatever it was, I was like, yeah, is this trying to be Citizen Kane? And I just couldn't find that, except that it's two people who are trying to be very powerful, who, you know, eventually create giant mansions in California, et cetera, et cetera. But at no point is Daniel trying to become more than an oil man. He's not trying to become someone in politics.
Right.
He's not trying to become someone who controls media outlets or anything like that. He is the king of all oil. I mean, you know, for his area.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly big conglomerates that are bigger oil men than him, but he just wants to be known as an oil man. And that's his thing. So so while you can try to make some comparisons, and some of them may pop up while you're watching the movie, it's not Citizen Kane trying to tell this life story of a man.
Sure. One of the aspects that I love about There Will Be Blood is the technical filmmaking side of the film. I think it's a beautifully shot film.
It is really nice.
It is shot in Texas, which made me think this movie is based in Texas, and then it turns out it's actually in California.
Right, because at one point you're like, how is he going to get a pipe all the way from Texas to California?
Yeah, so...
and you just realize, he's just the next county over.
Yeah, he's just in California. The cinematography is great. In one of the videos I linked to you is a Vimeo, and it's called There Will Be Blood by the Numbers. And essentially it is 2 or 3 minutes long video of laying over the golden ratio circle and showing you essentially how the cinematography, who I'm going to look up because I remembered it and then I forgot his name.
Robert Elswit?
Yes, who shot this film, just made it so symmetrically inclined.
Well, he's Paul Thomas Anderson's like
go-to
cinematographer, because again, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, he's the cinematographer of those films. So if you really like the cinematography in this, there are some brilliant bits in Boogie Nights where you're just like, oh, this is a masterful shot. This is perfect. I mean, so yeah, he's really good. And the two of them together, I think, make a great pair of just, let's knock this out of the park. And you can understand, even going back all the way to Hard 8, where they first are working together, that this is a match that is supposed to go on. So I like him as well.
Yeah, the cinematography is great. And this is in the Nerdwriter video that I linked, which talks a lot about the editing, brings in the cinematography a lot, because the average shot length in There Will Be Blood, I believe, is 13.2 seconds. And so it's fairly long shots. But what Eskel does through the film is they take one shot and they frame it multiple ways throughout the entire thing. So the camera's moving. It'll be like on a 3 shot and then press it on a 2 and then like pan over to a 1. It's a technique they're using constantly throughout the film, which is why when you mentioned earlier, because this film is 2 hours and 45 minutes, it's a long movie, but it never feels as long as it is, I believe, because even though the average shot length is long, the way they're moving the camera feels like there is a constant steady pace throughout this film. Which is wonderful, because as we talked before, if it's a long movie, it can drag on seemingly forever if it's not paced right.
Right.
And I think this movie is paced incredibly well. That video breaks down like the first hour of the film. It's like a 14-second shot length. And then it's the second hour is like a 13 and a half. And then the last 45 minutes, 30 minutes drops down to like 12. So there is an increase in pacing.
Increase,
And even in that, they're still like doing those alternate framings in a shot. So I don't think it feels like the Tree of Life or something like that, where there's these long, slow shots. It's well paced and moves forward at a manageable rate.
I think so too, but it's also one of those films where it's literally a quieter time.
Yeah.
And so part of that quietness has to be included in, so you might have a slower take, and there are things that can be said without being said a lot of the times, like the exchange that Eli and Daniel have at the train station as Eli is leaving town. It's a very quiet, just looking at one another, looking back at one another, and then just kind of moving on kind of stuff. That there's a lot of that in there. And there's also a lot of moments where you just have Daniel Day-Lewis, just kind of sitting there thinking in his environment and trying not to let the environment make him crazy. Although, maybe he did get crazy in the end from the environment. But, just that scene in the beginning where you see him working down in the mine, then he hauls himself out, and then you see him just on this windswept plain at night, and you can tell he's cold, and he's just sitting there, squatting there, eating his food by the fire, and just dead blank stare on his face. Like, this is my life. I can't believe this is what's going on. And that is his life. And so you have these very quiet, long moments that work out really well in the piece.
Yeah. It's definitely a quiet movie in that there's not a lot of dialogue. I mean, the first 15 minutes are no dialogue whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then throughout it's placed throughout, and Daniel has some long speeches he gives the town folk as he's trying to buy land and belittle some people.
The same speech, always.
Yeah, yeah. He's got it down to an art. And it is a quiet movie.
I know someone else that gives the same speech, or at least used to give the same speech every year at 20 different places. And I would go to multiples of those, and it's like, all of his quote unquote impromptu jokes are actually scripted, because this person would deliver the exact same joke in the exact same pacing and have the exact same pause length in between, almost like in his notes, it's like pause for laughter, then move on. It's just like, wow. So yeah,
that's really funny.
You can kind of see that in here.
We went and watched Coldplay last fall, and my good friend saw them 3 days earlier, and he was watching the show again. And in the middle of their Dallas performance, the lead singer, Chris Martin, screwed up the lyrics. He's like, "Oh no, we got to start over. I have to do my best performance for you all." And they started the whole song over, and everyone was like, he's human too.
Yeah.
And then our friend goes, "Yeah, he did that 3 nights ago." They have it built in. He purposely screws up the song.
And so, Daniel is doing this too. It's his prepared speech, his pitch that he's making to these town folk and trying to lowball them out of their land, so that he can maximize his profit. It's fascinating.
What did you think about the score of the film? Because I think it's pretty interesting for the period it's in.
I really didn't pay that much. Usually I will pay attention to a score. This one I didn't really pay that much attention to.
I think if you just watch the first 3 minutes again, it's really interesting because it has an eerie vibe is the only word I can really talk about, because it's like the first shot, I believe it's the first shot, is 3 hills in the desert. And essentially it is this long pull of like a violin bow, and it's very eerie and high pitched, and it sounds like you should be nervous for something.
Right.
And it's used again about 3 minutes later when Daniel comes up out of the hole. And I just feel like there is this dichotomy of the time period we're in and the simple landscape and the town people, and then this it's almost modern in a way. It doesn't feel like if this was maybe in the 1920s, this is the music you would hear, or the film. It is, I don't know. It is odd to say the least, I guess. I think
it's a little, I think there's some dissonance there.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know. It's just an element of this film that I think adds to it while taking out of its time period. You know what I mean? It's just not what I was expecting from what I consider kind of a Western-ish tale.
Yeah.
Of a man struggling and coming out on top. One thing I realized while watching this is these landscapes, essentially, it's just like yuccas and no vegetation and just dirt.
Right.
And not lush at all. But through watching films like this and all of the westerns that we've watched with this film, this series, it has made me greatly appreciate like the landscape around here. We drove through New Mexico and it's very sparse.
Right.
But I think it's like gorgeous now, and it's not the lush green palm trees of California, or it's not like Hawaii or anything like that, but it is, I think, has its own stark, like harsh beauty about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So as just really quick, it's Johann Brahms. Johannes Brahms is the composer.
Okay.
He died in 1897, which is the year before this story starts. So his stuff would have been fairly known still, and probably very popular when this movie kicks off. So, there's a little bit of historical significance going on.
Interesting.
Here too.
I feel like the early 1900s are this weird time where it feels so long ago because we've had so much advancement in technology that it feels like, you say like someone like Brahms died in 1987. It feels like that should be like the 1600s. Yeah, it's just like all these people you assume lived stuff 100 years ago.
Yeah, if you go look at the life of Mozart, it's like, America had already been settled by the time Mozart was around.
Yeah, that's
that
weird.
Kind of weird stuff.
Yeah. I don't, things like that throw off my sense of time when it's like, no, I had a timeline in my head. Please, everyone, stick to it. My life will be easier if we can all just assume these things were a long time ago.
That Mozart used to run around with the dinosaurs while the pyramids were being built.
Yeah, it just makes it easier for me. So, what do you think? There's anything wrong with There Will Be Blood? Do you think there's?
I think this is a great. No, I think this is a great movie. Like I said. With Paul Thomas Anderson. This is love his work. I've always get a kick out of the things that he does, some of it more than others. And this is right up there with it. I mean, I would probably go, if I were to rank the P.T. Anderson films, I would probably, let me pull up his biography again. I would probably rank this at least in the top 3.
Okay.
Because I really like The Master a lot. So it'd be Boogie Nights, The Master, and then this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to watch the rest of them now that I've finally dedicated time.
I mean, go back and just start his stuff in order. Watch Hard 8.
Yeah.
Followed by Boogie Nights. You'll start to see trends, and that's when you'll start to see everyone's, starting to appear in the movies and everything. So, yeah, just go back and watch Hard 8. It's pretty easy to get a hold of. Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Punch Drunk Love, which, meh. And then The Master, and Inherent Vice are all great. They're all great. They're really, really good. I have watched these multiple times, except for Punch Drunk Love. I've watched these multiple times because they are so good.
Is Paul Thomas Anderson considered one of the great American directors?
I don't know, because when it comes to box office results, his films are hit and miss. Punch Drunk Love, if I remember correctly, was just a flop at the box office. Because people, Punch Drunk Love was budgeted at $25 million, box office $24 million.
Oh, that's not good.
So it was basically considered just a huge flop, which is real interesting because Anderson's very next film is this film, There Will Be Blood. The Master, everyone was just like, oh, this is a brilliant film. I don't think that it did great at the box office. In fact, it didn't. It looks like most of The Master had a budget of $32 million. Box office $28 million.
Oh gosh.
So not great. When we look at Inherent Vice, the same thing. $20 million, brought in $14 million. So from a Magnolia with Tom Cruise, budget 37, brought in 48.
A win.
Boogie Nights,
maybe.
This is really the one that is his big winner because it was like $15 million and then made like $43 million.
Oh, okay.
And that's U.S. box office, so it could have been somewhere else. But he's not. When you hear a Paul Thomas Anderson movie is coming out, you're like, oh, I wonder how it's going to be masterfully done, but it's not going to make money.
Why is that?
Subject matter number 1.
Okay.
Number 2 might be the bitterness from the previous film.
Okay.
So like Boogie Nights came out and people were just like nuts for it. I mean, it is really, really good. And it's got huge stars in it at the time, rising stars in it. And then Magnolia comes out and people are like, I don't think I understand this film.
Okay.
Even with Tom Cruise in it, because there's this whole scene where frogs come raining from the sky towards the end of the movie.
Awesome.
And I think people were just like, I have no idea what this is about. Pass. And so nobody came to it. So that then when you get Punch Drunk Love, everyone's like, oh, this will be his comeback because it's going to be a comedy because it's got what's his face in it. And then the movie is just like, this is not a funny movie. This is not a comedy. It's a drama love story with a tragedy in it. And so people are like, pass. And then the next time you hear There Will Be Blood, and you're like, Paul Thomas Anderson again? Probably not. And then it comes out and it's really good.
Like amazing. Yeah.
And then The Master comes out and people are like, ooh, Scientology, we better stay away from that. And then you get to Inherent Vice, which I think is hysterical and great. But again, it is a really weird story as far as a detective tale goes, and people just didn't go see it. And it also didn't get a wide release.
Oh.
So as far as a craft, as far as understanding his craft, as far as being able to craft great performances from his actors. I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis does excellent in here. His final speech, so where it's like, I will drink your milkshake speech, is brilliant. Just not a moneymaker.
He's just a film nerd. Film nerd like God.
Yeah, people would look at his stuff and say, yes, from the art side of film, when we talk about film, he's a filmmaker. He's not a movie maker. He's not creating something that is, I'm sure he wants it to be mass consumed.
Sure.
But his stuff just does not get the mass consumer appeal that it should. And it really should, because it's good stuff. Top to bottom. Yeah,
I'm excited to get into the rest of it, because this movie I just feel like is just masterfully done on so many levels, and is a film everyone should watch if they haven't had the time. It won a couple Oscars, got nominated for a bunch of them. It's all there. I think if you listen to this podcast, this is a film you should take the
you definitely need to take the time.
And
it's slow, and it's not a fast pace. And I forget, there's another movie that's very similar to this, or in the same kind of time period, Western kind of setting, that I watched around the same time as this. And so there's a whole scene where I'm like, wasn't this in this movie? Why am I not seeing it this time? So I've kind of mixed a couple of movies together. But definitely one that people need to rush out in and go see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next week, we are looking at one of the great American indie filmmakers.
Yes, Kevin Smith's Clerks.
Yeah.
Next week on Zach on Film. Should be a lot of fun. If we're talking about true indie film, Kevin Smith went to film school for I don't even know if he made it a full semester or not.
Not long at all.
And was just like, I'm not putting up with this BS. I'm going to go out and make my own film. And he did, and released it, and it became a huge hit. And he has been still running off of that.
Oh yeah,
those fumes for decades now, and for my generation, Clerks is that thing that made my generation, especially people who are interested in film, go, oh yes, I can do this. And I would argue that Clerks is that film that allowed so many that opened the door for so many independent people, and also gave a lot of independents the courage to just go out and do it. Because I'm sure they're looking at it going, if Kevin Smith can do this, so can I.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good episode.
Have you never watched it?
Oh, no, I've watched it like 4 times. Yeah, no. I watched it once just for an entire... I think we had to do a video project. I'm like, I'm just going to watch Clerks really quick, and then I'll procrastinate really fast, and then I'll go do another video project.
Cool. Yeah, that'll be next week on Zach on Film. Yeah. Real quick, some of you may remember the original art that we had for Zach on Film, with Zach in his sweater waving at everybody, little cartoon thing. That was done by Carter Johnson, who is Scott Johnson's daughter. She is at University of Utah, U of T. I forget what the thing is. She is in their art program there, or their new media, game media thing.
Okay.
She's actually designed the T-shirt for the university's esports team.
No way.
It was that went through competition and everything, and hers was selected as the winner.
That's cool.
So if you're watching esports and it's got the University of Utah there, and their shirts, Carter Johnson, who designed the logo for this, the previous logo to this, she designed their shirts.
Hey, that's super
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Look at all these famous, cool people that come and do stuff for Major Spoilers.
That's actually
I just
really,
wanted
really
to throw
cool.
that out there, because it's a couple of weeks ago she said, hey, check out this. And I was like, is this a competition that we need to support? She's like, nope, I already won.
Oh,
so I was like, okay,
cool. That's awesome. So everyone, head over to majorspoilers.com, where you can find this podcast posting page, and you can give your thoughts on what we've talked about in this episode of Zach on Film, or any other thoughts you had while watching Paul Thomas Anderson's There Will Be Blood. While you're there, click on Amazon.com link, where you can go buy a Blu-ray copy of this film. It's not going to cost you any extra money when you use that link, but a little bit will come back to Major Spoilers to help keep podcasts like this coming out to you each and every week.
I am so pleased with everyone who has become a Patreon supporter, patreon.com/Major Spoilers. We started our Patreon program exactly a year ago.
Hey, cool.
And we have grown to 288 patrons in a year.
Awesome.
I know that there's others that have grown faster than that, but you know what? We're slow and we're steady and we're holding our course and we're doing it because of great people like you. So if you get some value out of these discussions, then I would encourage you to head over to patreon.com/majorspoilers and sign up today. Let's see if we can get 300 people to sign up. Actually, it'd be great if we could do 365 in a year, but I'll be happy with 300.
Yeah.
But let's get 300 people to sign up before the end of August. And like I said, $1 here or $2 there that you can kick in. It's cheaper than a cost of a movie ticket.
Yes.
Definitely cheaper than the cost of a bag of popcorn at your movie theater. So kick a little bit back our way and enjoy these movie discussions in the future.
Next week, we will be talking Clerks on Zach on Film.
This podcast is copyright 2017 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.